How's it going, everybody? This is turndownforwalt here, and I am joined by cameras that are not functioning right now, so that's a good start to this podcast. Well, shit, I wasn't expecting this already. Anyway, I'm gonna try to fix this while we intro our team here, but I'm joined by co-host SSBM Radar on YouTube, and our guest for the evening is someone who, of course, needs no introduction. It is Toph.
Hey, what's up, guys? Good to be here. Inaugural episode, huh?
That's right. So it looks like that worked. I have no idea why the cameras just decided to shit out on me like that, but we'll just roll with it.
No, webcams are bonkers is the most important thing I learned during pandemic era.
Yeah.
They're so finicky. I feel like they're so finicky. Like I can open OBS right now and I'll become green and purple until I restart my webcam. I'm not going to do that for the chat, but
we did see that actually in the Discord group, so can confirm.
It's very vaporwave-esque.
Yeah, there was a tournament set, I believe. It's maybe one of the SELs or something. Wizrobe had that on his camera, and he just kind of left it. And
Solid.
It was kind of cool. It kind of fits the Wizrobe vibe, you know?
A little bit, yeah. A little mysterious, kind of. But
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, in any case, we're really excited to have you here. This is, of course, the pilot episode of the show. Hopefully everything is functioning properly. I've been very stressed out for the past few days trying to get this set up. Really happy to have everyone in the chat. Just as a quick thing ahead of time, I will be looking at the chat. I'm not going to be kind of like responding to stuff immediately because I want to keep the discussion kind of flowing here. But we will have a segment at the end of the show for people to ask questions to the chat. We have a few already lined up. But if you guys have anything you want to ask for us, for Toph, for whatever, let's make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there'll be a hashtag in the future. So like whenever we do an episode, we'll always be keeping track of that AskTheMixup hashtag. So good to keep in mind.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so I guess just getting right into it, there were a lot of people that kind of asked like what this podcast is. So this was kind of like the love child of me and Radar wanting to make a podcast because a lot of people kind of fell off on doing that, and there's kind of a lack of that content in the Twitch space and the YouTube space right now. So that's kind of where we're at. But I'm gonna kind of pass that question off to Radar because I know he has like a lot more thoughts when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I was thinking a lot about. I think we've had some really good podcasts in the past. Of course, Scar and Toph Show and the Reads are kind of podcast-like. And, we had Commentators Curse and that kind of stuff. There haven't been as active, so I think there's kind of a space for that. But I think most importantly, for me, having been a part of like different gaming communities, I actually do think that Melee has like a very, very strong set of personalities. The example that comes to mind like really recently is, and we'll get into Smash Summit later, but Squid did commentary for a lot of people watching, maybe weren't as familiar with them, and like he killed it, right? Everyone really enjoyed his commentary. Everyone left being like, wow, that was great. And I think like those kinds of experiences should happen a lot on the show where it's like, hey, we take this person and we highlight why they're so cool because the scene has so many cool people. So
yeah, I'm trying to do more of that, on my own stream, on my own YouTube as well. Like I just had a really cool stream earlier this week with Junebug, and it was great, because like there's kind of been this. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk more about this later about Save Smash and all that stuff. But it just ties into that, and there's kind of been this. This portion of the community, all the PM diehards, and it was really cool to kind of see a bunch of them just kind of turn out, because I think all the people that you mentioned that are kind of like that, like the colorful personalities across Smash, like they have their own little subset of the community that they reside in, and you really get to engage with that community, make friends with a lot of those people when you look at it from that perspective. Like,
sure,
let's give those people a spotlight.
Yeah, guys, actually, in the chat, I'm going to post some links to all the YouTubes just so you guys can follow. If you don't already, you guys absolutely should be. So, yeah, give him a follow. Toast's doing some fucking great stuff over on YouTube, on Twitch. He's killing it, man.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So I guess some general like news, again, kind of what we are. I'm seeing a lot of stuff, kind of discussion on other podcasts, because Radar, you brought up the ones that kind of walked, or at least are kind of less active right now. Obviously, 6-4 is a thing, once a quarter or something like that whenever they get together.
Like when the moon is highest in the sky, they get together and do like something
I do want to give a huge shout out to the Wannabes podcast. They're a really great group of guys over in New York. I believe actually Will has moved since to California, but really awesome guys. Interviewed with them once before, and they had a lot of great guests on there as well. But yeah, not like a ton of podcasts going on, and the thing about the Mixup, the thing about 6-4 is it's a little infrequent. So to answer the question about kind of frequency for us, we're kind of thinking maybe bi-weekly if we can manage that. I mean, maybe even more, but we're gonna have to see.
Bi-weekly was the Scar and Toph show schedule, and I think it's a pretty good, it's
so
a good starting
we'll just
point.
copy you and it'll be fine. So
yeah.
I thought you were going to
bring that back at some point.
Derailed, but yeah.
Yes, Alston Melee, I'm seeing also Hada in the chat saying that. Absolutely, Alston doing really, really great things as well.
Alston Melee, yeah, I love Alston Melee. Dude, yeah, no, it's been great. I feel like 2019, 2020, there have been a lot of like these kind of, sort of, let's take this opportunity to shout out some of the unsung heroes of the Melee scene. Mm-hmm. And I love that style of content, especially when like how Alston Melee does it. They're so good at it.
No, for sure. Definitely. Like just laughing at what he's posting in the chat. But yeah, definitely like a lot of the content that's been put out in the last little while. I think everyone has kind of their own style too, so it's been super interesting. Mm-hmm. Do we want to transition into kind of some of the news? Like
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I know the big one. I think you wrote this in the doc radar, so go ahead and let's talk.
Uncle Punch, man. The new Uncle Punch training mode is, for lack of put simply, is amazing.
It's bonkers.
It's bonkers is right. Like it is actually going to change everything. It's kind of crazy to think in the timeline of Melee. In June we had Slippy, and it was like, wow, this is going to change everything. And then now we have Uncle Punch, and it's like, wow, this is going to change everything, and it hasn't even been 6 months. Yeah,
I mean, it's like still like private beta. I actually was, like yesterday, I was looking at Uncle Punch's Patreon numbers, and he was like 1K, and then today he's at like, I think he's already at high 1200s.
That's insane.
Yeah,
Holy
a lot
crap.
of people overnight, and you guys should all go check that out, Uncle Punch's Patreon. I was messing with it earlier today. Too. Yeah, it's definitely bonkers. Just from a technological perspective, I want to pick his brain more on how he even did it, because this is kind of flying under the radar, because obviously the thing Smashers care about is like, how can I practice, like what's actually in front of me. But I was thinking about it, like, how did he even code this up? Like, he was saying that apparently you don't have to use assembly anymore. Like, you can
really, okay,
people can write. That was one of the big things for him, was like, you can write C code now, and that is actually going to help, I think, because
huge.
A lot of people, I've thought about, what if I jumped in and did some open source work for Melee tools, and I would never be able to do it in assembly. I would give up. But
that's actually really interesting too, because that opens the door. I mean, obviously not really with Nintendo, and we'll get to that later, but it kind of opens the door in the way that like TF2, CSGO, like all of these people had like modding communities. I mean, like obviously the MOBA genre as a whole was made by a fan mod. It's like the things that can be done because they're like, you have the ability to open source things like that is insane to me.
Yeah, that was pretty much my exact thought, is like, I think anytime a developer is able to turn a game, obviously in this case it's not a developer, it's a community member, but turn something to create like a, hey, community, if you want to make stuff for this to make it better, like you can, as opposed to having one person doing all the work, you get stuff that's like things that people would never think of. And Dota is a great example, which you already kind of alluded to, where, Warcraft 3 created a whole new genre of games in a custom game. And I think we're going to see that, where it's like already Uncle Punch was kind of breaking the mold. And then who knows where in a year from now, like what we're seeing is just kind of a regular thing.
Yeah. I think opening this up and letting people just write C code and kind of iterate is actually going to be huge. Because I'm always like pleasantly surprised by how many people are kind of contributing to this stuff. And yeah, I think the number's only going to go up.
For sure.
I think to me, the most noteworthy thing about it, and like there's a lot of stuff, there's going to be content on YouTube. I think Leffen is making a video. I think Toph, you're going to cover it soon, actually.
That's my plan.
I think you're talking about it right after this, right?
Yeah, I think so. If you can speak to that. But so what I was going to say was just that, like, one of the things that sticks out to me is that you can kind of save sequences basically. So like you can either save a sequence where you're controlling the DI that they're about to do, or you can also save like a position of a opponent and then randomize the recording so that what that would look like is, say you're on the edge and you're edge guarding and you have a fox that's off stage, you can save different kinds of recoveries and then edge guard that.
See what
and
covers
it'll
what.
play the recoveries randomly, which is like basically giving you the ability to lab out any sequence kind of ever.
Yeah, and this is something that, you know, I don't think Smashers are as used to doing it as like fighting game players, like 2D fighting game players, but this is like one of the nicest things about, like, when I was getting into Grand Blue Versus, like I did a lot of this where I would test neutral game scenarios, and then I would record 5 different sequences and see if I could react to all of them or like how many you could cover, and it makes getting good so much more streamlined. I feel like it's so once people start messing with, like, so Levin was on today, it actually was kind of pertinent because there was that whole, if you guys saw the Smash Twitter stuff with Shy posted that thread on Falco versus Puff combo options off throw, and then Ginger was getting in there like, yeah, I don't think this stuff is real, and then Levin on his stream was like, no, let me really break this down, and he recorded those Puff DIs and he was showing all the different kind of flowchart options that Shy was talking about. I mean, that would be so annoying to test in the past, I feel like. And now you could just do it. You could just whip it
I mean, the thing that I'm thinking out is, like, I do the frame data series on my channel, and it's like legit the way that I do it is by counting frames in YouTube videos. And it's like, this is the most painful thing ever, and I hate this series because I don't want to do this anymore. But
you guys should see also, if you haven't seen, it's not even just that. There's also like the new ledge dash training is insane. There's all this. There's like a graph on the screen. I don't know if you guys have seen like the Street Fighter V where it shows you a bar for like how much frame advantage you have. Like, so that's in there now. It'll put a heat map on the screen. If you do an invincible attack from the ledge, it'll put a heat map of where your invincible hitboxes went out. There's so many
that's awesome.
crazy features. When I was watching that the training mode 3.0 trailer, I was just like, dude, there's so much shit in here that, like, I can't believe he unveiled all of it at once. Like, it just feels like, whoa.
Yeah, he
like,
could definitely have spread that out.
Each of those features would get somebody hyped. You know, like, each of those features is like, damn, that's big. And he just dropped it all like a bomb. So,
hey, well, the good news for me is that I'm a Mario player, so none of that actually helps me whatsoever because I'm still just going to get my ass beat. But that's neither here nor there.
I think, to me, what's just so crazy about it is, like, I haven't played that long. Like, I kind of started in like 2014, and in 2014, which was I think like pre 20XX hack pack, already like practicing was kind of not the easiest thing. And then when 20XX hack pack came out, it was like, wow, I can actually practice like punish game with computer opponents that are DIing. And now, like, in such a short span, we've reached basically like, hey, you can consistently and very easily kind of do anything, and then like, we're going to see what impact that has, because we've already seen like how much better people have got on SDIing up airs and that kind of thing. And it's like almost like freaky. Like, what is the meta going to look like in 6 months if people are able to just kind of map things out so efficiently?
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy to think about. Especially given like that, like, players like Leffen and I'm sure Zane, like they're going to be working with, and like I was talking to Billy Bo Peep like yesterday. We set up a Fox Discord actually that he already started tweeting about. I'm going to probably advertise that both on Twitter and on my stream tomorrow. But the coolest part is the fact that you can literally save these recorded sequences and like you can just give them to a new player. Like, people don't even have to worry about it really, because like we'll do it for you. You know what I mean? Like that was when I was another game I was trying to get into over the summer was Them's Fighting Herds. And that game has a really cool combo practice thing where you can basically, so you can record a combo. Okay, and you can say, like, so you go into training mode, you record a combo, and then you save it as like a little file. And that file, someone else can load it up. It's just very simple to do. And then they can practice that combo like it's a training mode. Like, how do you say, you know, like in they have combo trials in some of these fighting games. It's like, do this, and then it'll show you success, you know?
I love that. That's
like
awesome.
Almost like an event mode. What event mode would be?
Make your own events. Literally. Yeah. I remember Bobby Scar a long time ago, back in like 2012, 2013, when he was doing his, I guess 2012, when he was doing the lean melee thing. He had this Google Doc he wrote out of like Captain Falcon trials. And it was literally a Google Doc. Like there was no technology built around this, but it was like I remember one of them was like, you up throw the computer, which obviously doesn't DI at this percent. It's like Young Link or something, and you try to get like this many up airs or something like that. You know what I mean? And it was like, this is a good practice thing to like make sure you're getting the really crispy instant up airs. Well, now, first of all, let alone you can practice it with DI. Second of all, somebody can record this file basically, or it's not going to be exactly like a combo trial, but it's going to be these sequences that you can lab out and just give new players, and they won't even. It'll be just plug and play for them. Which I think is so sick, because I think a lot of people are intimidated by like, okay, well, how do I get into this stuff? But the fact that you've got Left labbing this stuff on stream, showing people how it's done, and the fact that we're going to be able to just record these files and send them to people, like it's going to be so easy for new players. Which is like the thing I'm the most excited about is like, how do we make it as easy as possible for all the new players that are like interested in Melee to like, stick with the game and get good and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
get as good as
for
they
sure.
want.
It's, I mean, accessibility is the big answer, and that's and that's what all of this does, which is what's amazing.
Yeah,
I think one of the things that I think about a lot is just like, because it's accessible, that's great, but also I think there's this perception in the community that you can't become Zane, essentially, that like that there's a moment where you could have become good at Melee, and that was back at whatever point, and you can't ever catch up with the Mangos of the world. And obviously Zane is like a doc kid that kind of disproves that in a way, but I think there's still people who come into this scene today and go, yeah, these guys are so ahead of me. And to those people, it's like, all I want to say is we have tools now that we never had, and we have resources now that we never had, so you can get like better so much more quickly. And it makes me kind of wonder what you guys think about like the idea of, can a player come in now and be better than Zane basically in 3 years, 2 years, whatever?
Short answer, yes.
Of course.
But, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it takes work, of course. But, I do think, if anything, like, I think there's like, there's definitely this kind of like there's been this long-standing idea of like, you either kind of got it or you don't. And I actually see a lot of like commentators actually kind of parroting this idea, which is kind of interesting. It's like, well, I'm a commentator because I'm washed up, or like I don't know. I feel like I see a lot of commentators say that. It's like, dude, okay, honestly, like the moment I realized it's not really like that was like when I was I've told this story before, but it was like when I was playing Hugs to warm him up after. So he got into Genesis top 8 after he beat Amsa, right? It was like Genesis, is that 6 or 7?
Mm-hmm.
He beat Amsa, who's in top 8, and I was like warming him up for Lucky, and I like won the first friendly, and I was like, I could beat this top 8. like he's in top 8, but I like beat him, so like I could beat this top 8.
The anger slowly builds up.
I think Hugo's a great example, because Hugo, he's kind of like multiple times he's kind of like fallen off as a player or whatever, and then he's like, no, I'm gonna get it right back, and then he's like top 15 again, beats Leffen, beats Cody or whatever. And I mean, I honestly think one of the big differences between him and the way he talks and a lot of other people is he says to himself, no, I know I can get it back if I want to. Whereas a lot of people kind of rule it out. And honestly, like, your expectations, like, you will rise or fall to your expectations, I think, ultimately. So, yeah. And especially with the tooling, like, people have now. It definitely used to feel, I'll tell you, it used to feel this way hardcore, like, in the early, like, 2010s and shit, because, like, it was so much harder to practice. But now, like, look at a guy like Face Roll, a guy like Spark. Like, how many Sheiks are actually just reaction tech chase killing you to, and that's something you can totally practice. You can sit on your Uncle Punch training mod, go into combo training, practice reaction tech chasing with Spacey 2 hours a day. No one's done this because Face Roll's still the best at it. Sparks, they're still the best at it.
Mm-hmm.
But what's to stop the third great tech chasing Sheik from learning how to do that and then killing space animals off of grabs? Like, I still haven't fought a Sheik that does that besides Spark or Face Roll. So like that could be you. It could be me. You just got to do it. And I think that's great.
Feeling for me that I often kind of wonder, your perspective as a more of a former top player, what I kind of wonder is like, it seems like there's many, many different paths to success because of how dynamic kind of Melee is.
Oh, there are.
So, for sure. And so part of the reason I think we see like a Hugs fall off and then pull back in is because he's like, in anime and fighting games and stuff, there's like that little hexagon thing where people have the different skills. Like, they're pushing.
The whatever, I don't know what it's called.
I don't know.
The stat graph, or
I think everyone in the chat knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's okay. But it feels like they're kind of pushing different angles, and you can kind of find the avenue as a player where you want to be, like where you can push it. Except Zane is good at everything. But
true. I think there's also kind of like I know this question was intended for you, Toph, so have at it. But I think there's also like ebbs and flows in like what is and isn't meta. And it's kind of like weird because, you know, like you heard people on like commentators, for instance, talk about how like shield dropping will never become a thing, or like, you know, people will never do like XYZ tech. And then it's like it comes into effect, and then something else from way back in the day that people never considered as even a viable option becomes like the thing to do on top of that. So it's like this continuous building on top of each other, but also like breaking it down in a way that it's like it keeps it unique as things progress forward.
Yeah, totally. No, I had this thought actually like the other night. I was watching I went into this rabbit hole of like, I don't know, I'm sure you guys do this. So I watched that, like Axe posted that clip of Lord or whatever, like styling on him.
Yep.
You saw that, right?
Yes.
It was like the most insane minute of Falcon versus Pikachu. I didn't know Falcon could combo Pikachu like that. I always thought Falcon gets pretty much jack squat damage off Pikachu except for a couple little sequences. And I was like, okay, well, that's insane. And then I was like going back and watching some old Lord videos. And I watched one of his videos from Genesis where he lost to Cobalt. And like I've always thought of Lord, like I've known Lord for a long time. I used to go to his house and play friendlies with him. I've always thought of him as like this genius player who just like sees the game, you know, different or whatever. Like he like has these really innovative little sequences he does and stuff like that. And I just watched him kind of watched Cobalt beat the brakes off of him by just hitting him with kind of just consistent shit and not falling in any of his. And I was like, dude, Cobalt, like I just had this thought was like Cobalt is good at this completely disparate skill set in melee than Lord is. I mean, obviously they both have really good movement and stuff like that, but I had that exact thought was like Cobalt is using he's just hitting Lord with shit that, first of all, he's not letting Lord's shit work on him, so he's neutralizing the part of the hexagon he's good at, and then he's hitting him with his part of the hexagon.
Right, exactly, and that just turns out to be a bad matchup.
You see that so much, honestly, you really do, and I think that's really great because like. You don't even need to be like a top player, right? Like I feel like people used to at least, maybe still do, like overemphasize, like got to be the best and all this. Like look at a guy like PGH Carroll, right? Like there was that thing that was like, okay, who posted that? It was like,
what combo defines you or
what combo? If something was the blank and blank is your name, what's that for you? And he was like, well, pick one. He probably had the most impressive submission of that. I was like, my jaw was on the floor for that whole minute.
Because he's good at everyone. It's like
for sure.
He's such a you guys should all. I mean, if you haven't watched any PGH Carroll combo footage, like you need to. He's not a great tournament player, but like he doesn't have to be. Like he's so unique and like melee lets you leave your own mark on the game, no matter who you are, and no matter how good your tournament performances may be. There's so much more than tournament performance to determine your skill set in melee and kind of what you bring to the table. So
yeah, absolutely. That's the reason why I think people like this game so much, is that like exactly what you said. You can play it for whatever reason you want. It's like I play this game not to win tournaments because I just don't believe I ever can do well in them, but I just play it because I like getting sick Mario combos. That's just what I do. So
100%.
But it's different for everybody, and that's what makes it beautiful. So
I think especially when we think about, like, this all started with us talking about Uncle Punch, but like I think sometimes people underestimate how like really small amounts of practice can have like really, really large impacts on your ability in a way that you almost don't expect. Like say, for example, the average player maybe goes on Slippy and they play like 20, 30 minutes a day and they don't feel like they're getting better. And then they grind like 5 minutes of ledge dashes for like 3 weeks. And then now they can ledge dash, and that's like a great option. And then I found that with myself where it's like, oh man, I feel like I'm kind of plateauing. And then you put in like pretty modest amount of effort, and all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, I can keep going with this. And again, going back to all these like resources we have, it's just kind of, that's only getting easier. And you can kind of only put in more.
You know, that's a really big Drug Fox thing, actually. He's like, it's kind of one of his Drug Foxes, which is like, dude, if you just practiced and learned like one little thing, where like Melee's made of little things.
Yeah.
Like, Dude, I basically got on the top 100 by practicing ledge dashes 30 minutes a day. Like, I think Blur said it on commentary one time back in 2014 or whatever. He's like, dude, half of my kills were from ledge dash up smashes.
I mean, even
people would just challenge me on the ledge, and then I would ledge dash up smash and kill them.
Same
and
thing with like Zane.
So I literally beat so many top players just ledge dash up smashing.
Right.
Yeah, Zane.
Yeah, I know Zane said like the first 2 years he started playing, he was like, yeah, I just chilled at the ledge and then just back through or down throw people off the ledge.
You can really tell. You can really tell from his playstyle. Yeah, and because you can see it. Like especially if you play friendlies with him or watch him play friendlies, he will just start going for like a little thing. He will just start standing there and going for power shield up tilts. You know, like he's like, oh, this is my moment to work in that new thing I learned. This is my moment to work in that yet another little new thing I learned. Oh, I've been doing a lot of edge cancel dares in my training lately. Time to work those in, you know? And you just kind of do it, and you do it until you're doing it too much. And then once you're doing it too much, you find that perfect balance of how to strike the right balance. Then you work it into your tournament gameplay, and then before you know it, it's just part of your arsenal.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so cool. Like what you said, Radar, about like the just sheer availability of options that are around now for improvement, because it's like you see those small tangible improvements, and they are tangible. That's what makes it the game addicting, is it's like I physically got better at doing this tech, or I am better at this matchup, or I am better at understanding neutral, like whatever it might be. You level up periodically, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and I love that you just said the word tangible, because that was actually one thing that bothered me about learning some of these other more modern, simpler fighting games, like Ultimate, for example, is like you get in a game like Ultimate. Okay, this is my own experience, but because I played that game like pretty seriously for like a year, and I was going to locals and stuff. I feel like you could very quickly get to a pretty competent level where you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing. But it's like that tangible feeling of improvement is a lot harder to find in a simpler fighting game where you can't just learn a technique. I mean, depending on your character, but yeah, you quickly get to where you're like, I'm kind of doing everything my character's supposed to be doing, and it's kind of like, now what, you know? And then some people are really into that philosophy. That was like, you know, you read all the old David Serlin articles. He's like, well, fighting games should all essentially be just a rock, paper, scissors match. But I've always liked that tangible feeling of improvement. Like, yes, I can do this thing now. And, you know, I suspect people that like get into sports and more physical activities and more physical forms of competition, I suspect they're kind of addicted to that feedback loop as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Definitely, for sure.
If I had to guess.
This actually feels like a decent segue into starting to talk about Smash Summit, because it seems like one of the big takeaways for me is looking at Zane as a player, of course, the player who won, and feeling like he is so insanely well-rounded. And that when we think about kind of this hexagon or whatever the term would be, and you're kind of building in a stat, it feels like that quality that he has. Sheet. Yeah, well, he's like going.
He's maxed out. Like, it's like,
he's pushing. He is. So yeah, I will say that there's kind of two ways to get good. There's the fun way to get good, which is to buff your strengths. There's the boring way to get good, but you have to do it eventually, which is to patch your weaknesses.
Yep.
Somehow Zane seems to be able to do both constantly. It's very odd. Okay, mind you, there are exceptions. I think there are certain things that he used to tunnel vision on that if you gave him that, he would just completely like bear trap snare you with it. I remember I was watching a stream the other night, and his, you know, Eris was basically saying to him like, you used to, what was she saying? She was like, you used to go out there more. Like, you used to just go get him.
You've changed.
You know? Yeah, and he was like, no, you're not supposed to do that or whatever. And she's like, no, you could have done it right there. He's like, I don't think I could have done it right there. Okay, whatever. Point being,
getting called out though, like
overall, there's little examples where like I think he used to be a little bit more like hardcore covering certain options, and maybe you could argue that he's gotten worse at those, but I think really he's just kind of become this insanely complete player.
Yeah, I think like because you said like he kind of levels down in certain aspects, but that also
hardly
adds like so much more complexity to his overall game plan, which is what makes him so like fucking scary to play against. Or just to even watch. It's insane.
Dude, I promise you, I played him back in 2017, 2018. Well, not 2017, like 2018. He was just a dash dancer. Like, he was so well, not so predictable. He was
really good at dash back, right?
But like, yeah, I mean, I think any top player would tell you, like, including Zane himself, like, yeah, he basically got to top 100 and top 50 or whatever by being a dash dance grabber. But like, he's just not that anymore. Like, you can't boil down his gameplay to something like that anymore. It's It's just like his, and like it's the most obvious, I think, when you look at his matchup spread. Yoshi and Puff and Pikachu and how he's doing in those matchups. Not only that, but the fact that he's down to stay ahead of the curve. HBox isn't even doing, we talked about that in the post-tournament interview at Summit. He was like, yeah, HBox, like, he's not DIing my throws correctly. I don't know what's up with that. Like, 2Saint DIs them way better. But I'm ready for it. Like, there's these crazy new, essentially, sequences and DI follow-ups that I've labbing, and that I'm basically, if HBox ever does learn how to DI my current flowchart against him, the next one's already ready.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't even need it, but he just wants to make sure he's future-proofed, which is how often do you see that from players?
Yeah, and it's the same thing that we mentioned earlier, where it's like eventually they'll peel back those layers, and maybe the older option is what ends up being what he needs to get by it. But it's like you said, he future-proofed himself so hard that it's like he's prepared for that. He's prepared for the advancement as well.
Yeah,
it's so scary, man. I don't know.
It is very scary. I mean, I kind of just think he's going to win everything for a while.
Yeah, one of the things that I was really thinking while watching Summit, and one of the things I'd like to ask both of you guys, is we're kind of in an era right now where it seems like Zane is so clearly the number one player that, as a spectator for Smash Summit, you could tell when he was playing most players that the commentators were like, haha, who's going to win this one? And everyone's like, it's Zane. It's Zane.
It's
so
Zane, yeah.
It reminds me of that kind of HBox era we had earlier. And I guess the question I have for kind of you guys, maybe we'll start with Walt because he hasn't said as much, I guess, is like, do you feel like it's a bad thing for the scene if one player is like too dominant? And are we there yet with Zane? Or is it kind of good to have that person who's so far forward? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. It's kind of like everyone, it's a target on your back. Everyone has someone they want to beat at that point. If anything, it's kind of like people get more excited for those little moments where they beat the number ones. And it's the same thing when Hungrybox was number one. It's like, I hope Hungrybox loses because he wins everything, But I don't think it's necessarily like a bad thing. I know people said like in the past those levels of dominance have been like killing the scene, but it's like I really don't think it's all that bad.
Yeah, from my perspective, we've always, like, most of Melee's history, there's been a clear number one. So like, how could it possibly be bad? We've literally almost always had a clear number one.
I guess maybe to rephrase the question, it's not so much that I'm saying that, like, is it bad that there's a clear number one? I think it's more, one of the things I find myself thinking is, like, as Melee becomes more and more optimized, like, it felt like when, say, for example, Armada was dominant, that, yes, he's dominant, but there's so much room to improve in the game. And then HBox came along, and it was like, yes, he's dominant, but there's kind of so much stuff that it feels like people aren't doing against Puff. Like Zane, for example, we hadn't really seen Marth matchup optimized. And I still think we're there for Zane, but I'm just wondering, like, is there a ceiling there where all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, like, is this player
if there's a ceiling, if there's a ceiling, I think other people are just gonna reach it. Like, if Zane does hit a ceiling,
true.
then he's I mean, then number 2 and number 3 come up and they start pushing
his own ceiling too.
Yeah, that's fine, right?
Yeah, like, then all the sheiks come knocking. So,
but I mean, just to remind you, like, people thought Mutaking solved the game, and like people thought the robots won in 2007.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. So, that's what I mean.
Like, I mean, this is just gonna happen. I mean, it's gonna go on forever, right? Like, no one's ever gonna actually hit the ceiling.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's what's kind of interesting about it. I just find myself, when I'm watching the person who's number one, and I think I'm probably not alone in this, the more they start to feel like untouchable, the more you're like, okay, someone knocked this person down. Like, and that's how I felt with HBox for a while, and now I'm starting to feel that a little bit with Zane, but he's still close to Mango, so it's a bit more interesting, but that's what's kind of exciting.
At Summit 10, I actually really liked that vibe of, like, there was this vibe that was like, okay, Mango is kind of the only guy that can touch this dude right now. And then the Mango set was really close. The winner set kind of had a sloppy ending, but like the loser set, or I guess it would be the grand set, that was a really close set. And, Mango even apparently thought he played poorly and he could have done better. So, especially if this Mango Zane rivalry, like if Mango's able to kind of keep up with him, which right now it looks like he can,
Oh yeah.
I think we're just going to get a lot of really good melee out of those two in particular, and it doesn't feel like the other people are too far behind.
Yeah, actually, just curious on your list specifically, number 5 and behind, because I think it's clear that 1 through 4 is Zane, Mango, and then some combination of IBW and none. If you ask me,
right?
I mean, where do you place the rest of these people? You know, like for instance, the people that are at Summit.
Yeah, I mean, Wizzy probably would be. I haven't really, honestly. I know that there've been a couple. I honestly don't even want to speak out of turn here because I saw a couple people did like their current power ranking streams. Like Johnny did one,
IBW
did one, IBW. So I'm gonna forget someone, and then they're gonna get offended. But yeah, it feels like who would there be? It's like Wizzy would probably be number 5 right now, and then the next tier is something in the order of who is it? It's like Johnny Ginger.
Face roll maybe.
Face roll's up there.
Yeah,
he had kind
Spark.
of a disappointing summit, but
H-Box as well, I guess.
Yeah, we got to consider him too.
Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, you can't forget H-Box. It's just kind of funny how there's certain people where their lows are so low and their highs are so high. Like Bobby kind of has that factor to him. It's weird to think of H-Box as that sort of player, but I guess he's almost in that conversation. Where like I still feel like if you beat H-Box, everyone's like, "Oh shit, that guy beat H-Box." But then like H-Box can kind of lose to anyone when he's streaming. So I know
I mean, for H-Box, he had who did he play against? Whiskers, right?
Whiskers, yeah, he dropped a set to Whiskers.
Yeah, that was insane.
Which is
me, right? Like that's
an insanely good Yoshi, mind you. But,
no, he's amazing, but it's like I don't think anyone would have expected that kind of win. That's right. Which is crazy to think. And like I know we mentioned this actually in our agenda for the evening as well, but it's like it kind of draws back to this, like, I know a lot of people in the past were talking about this, like, oh, it's online, so it doesn't really count type thing. Obviously, with Slippy in the mix now, I don't really think that's an argument anymore, at least in my opinion. But, I mean, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think people are getting tired of that argument, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, dude, the tournaments are too real. The best players are clearly winning. Like, if you're still using that as an excuse, like, well, I don't even know that anyone's really still using that as an excuse. Like, HBox used to complain about lag a lot in the the pre-Slippy net play era, or the early Slippy, but like I feel like he has mostly. I think for the most part, the people that are performing worse online, they're chalking it up to other factors, which is legit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I also think that like there's layers and tiers to the argument, in that like if you're playing at the beginning of a bracket in an online tournament, like you might play some like pretty janky, laggy, rollbacky melee. But if you're playing against, like if you're talking Mango versus Zane Slippy matches, those are pretty legit. And I know that like every day I open Twitter, I have Ryobeat tweeting some online is messed up and that we shouldn't compare them tweets. So we still got some people kind of harping against it. But it feels like what Toph is saying, this like the results are kind of lining up how you would expect them to, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry to answer for you. It's kind of.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think that like, yeah, the results speak for themselves. It's just like, from a sheer volume of tournaments perspective, it's like, how can you deny online tournaments at this point? It's like, they are doing so much good for Melee as just as an objective whole that you can't say that it's a bad thing. Like, you just can't. I don't know.
Michael, I want to thank you for bringing up the kind of the difference between like late bracket and early bracket, because that's actually very true. I've entered a couple online tournaments where like my first round will be pretty bad. Like 100+ ping, very rollbacky. The guy might be on Wi-Fi, and there's some players where it's not the great. And I know that there's players who, like, Face Roll was saying he had some kind of, and like Pew Pew in the Smurf bracket, for example, who dropped out because, like, yeah, it's still a thing, but it does feel like it gets mitigated a lot once you get into the upper echelons, because I feel like at least, not to speak for the top players, but it does feel like, most of them have good connections with each other. Obviously, SJ has that lag tier list, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Cody's lag god and all this shit, but I mean. Yeah, I agree. No, I don't think anyone's saying it's the same as offline, right? I think that's like a red herring. Like, I see people like saying, I hate when people compare it and say it's the exact same as offline. And I'm like, well, okay, but show me the people that are saying it's the same as offline, because I don't think anyone's been saying that. Yeah, I think people are just saying it's pretty good and it's like the best we've got, and it's actually better than pretty much what most other scenes have. So like, you know, like if Zane's winning the tournament and Mango's getting second and Cody's getting third, it can't be that bad.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that actually raises a good question, which is there a space for online events after COVID is over? Because right now we're talking about like, yeah, it's the best we have. No one's saying it's like online one-to-one comparison, but it's pretty legit and we're seeing the results play out in the way that we'd expect. So what happens after like COVID is over? Should we just be like, whatever, that was just a kind of weird phase that we were all in our houses, or should we kind of keep it up in some way? And I guess, Walt, what do you think?
I absolutely should keep it, in my opinion. I don't know if there's like a very harsh disagreement about that, but it's like more events drive the community. Like they can only do a net good, in my opinion, for how the scene progresses, how players develop in terms of the meta. It's all so important to be able to have those events with a high frequency, and especially when you can eliminate travel costs, region sort of things, like taking off days of work, because if you have a job, like all of these other things, it's like just being able to hop on your computer and jump into a tournament, that is huge for the scene. And then you throw in things like, I don't know if I'm actually at liberty to say these anymore because like the SCL situation, but like events like that, which have like the level of production quality that Summit can bring on, or someone like Summit, on a semi-regular basis, we're talking about bringing Melee into a type of spotlight, in my opinion, that we've literally never seen before in its 20 years of gameplay now at this point. It's like we're looking like literally the LCS of Smash, and that's amazing to me.
Yeah, I think it should be like kind of integrated. People are talking about how, you know, like there's kind of this like Melee off season. One of the cool ideas that I saw, someone might have even been Aiden, but it's somebody. Maybe it was one of you guys. But someone was like, yeah, we should have like, you know, imagine SCL runs during the Melee off season.
Yep.
Or during the IRL tournament off season. Cool. Now, and then like you can use it to even seed once tournaments get back, or help seed or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I think, or you can have online qualifiers in the invitationals, things like that. Makes it using them as last chance qualifiers for things like Summit is a really cool idea. Yeah, it's great. I definitely think we should have more. And I also really like the SCL and stuff like Training Mode Tuesdays, which I did a YouTube video on. I like the idea that you could kind of play with these formats where you don't have to even adhere to the double limb.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Right. Like just like mess with it. Like run events that are. We've been doing double LM as basically like a legacy, legacy holdover, because that's what we've decided a long time ago that we should run. But I mean, that doesn't mean it's the only thing we should run.
Yeah, I think someone actually on Twitter, either on my post or yours, Radar, asked kind of that very question of like, do you think online tournaments should be more creative in those formats because we have the ability to, Swiss pools, ladders, what have you, and utilize like this opportunity we have to just kind of like say, okay, I'm gonna run a tournament, fuck it, let's just start it, rather than just doing what we already know by the book. And like having those things that are unique it's really cool.
No, for sure. Like I think like, especially because esports in general is kind of in a fun space where like we have so many creative influences to look to. Like we can look at other games and like steal the stuff we like and keep the stuff that we like about our own game. And I feel like Slippy and online events opens up a place to do that, particularly because like, I mean, for people who haven't gone to like major tournaments and haven't traveled, like sometimes you're spending like $600-700 to like go to a 2-3 day tournament, like you're getting between food, your flight, like everything, compared to being able to like do sort of an event across the whole continent and you're fine. That kind of makes it so that you can book players that like otherwise would not be able to get time off work or, even just be able to commit and travel. And so I'd love to see stuff that's like mixing it up. Like maybe if it's as simple as just, it's on Wednesday. It's not like, it's like a weekend or like it's a weekly, like we saw with the SCL, or just something like totally different. Would be cool.
Yeah. And it's like, it's Circle of Life too. Kind of like, I know, like for you and me, Radar specifically, and then Toph as well, I know, because you've been getting into the YouTube space for tournament recap sort of things, and you do your Toph talks and everything. It's like this directly supports things that we do on YouTube, which in turn supports the community. And it's just this like positive feedback loop where we're able to kind of keep developing, giving visibility to the scene and supporting in a way that allows it to sustain theoretically forever.
That's what, that's the goal, at least, you know?
I think especially when we're talking about accessibility from the perspective of a competitor and being able to get in the game, I think there's also a huge accessibility factor when it comes to online event running. You know, like if you want to have a major tournament in a typical venue, like I think it was Genesis where they said like it was something like $300,000 of money, not necessarily lost, but like you have to be able to put up a huge amount of money to get a venue, to get kind of all the logistics and stuff to run it, compared to having the ability to run it on way less of a budget. Like it kind of reminds me of music creation or YouTube, where like at one point you needed a fancy recording studio, and then now maybe you just need your computer, like, and you can kind of run a whole event. That's kind of how we got Rona Rumble. I guess it's Rollback Rumble now. And we also got the Untitled series, like a bunch of events that were kind of fun midweek content that we never would have had because like the barrier is there, right? Like you have to have a venue, you have to have other things, especially Untitled is a good example, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, I feel like if I was a TO, I would be like, it would be like a wet dream to be able to do this with like essentially zero budget. Because it's like, in the past, you know, not to say that this doesn't come back once all this situation ends around the world, but it's like you consider the overhead of finding CRTs, you know, like you said, finding a venue, making sure enough people actually sign up to the event to offset the cost. It's like TOs already operate in the red so much that it's like they can just run an event for free. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
No,
absolutely. It's just like the I don't know. Yeah, the reduced overhead in every way, for players, for organizers. Yeah, I mean, like you said, like for players too. Like the fact that even for me, like when I decide to enter a tournament, like I'm like, damn, I can just like be at home and just do it. Like I don't have to like plan travel. I don't have to plan. Even for a local, like, you know, like the fact that I can just kind of, and I don't know. I mean, it feels, here's the thing, right? We miss offline events right now because we haven't had them for a long time. We don't, they're you know, you want what you can't have. But yeah, I think once, like, you know, we can go outside and shit like that again, like, you know, hopefully in a year or two, yeah, we're gonna realize like, shit, you know, we were onto something with these online events. I think in an odd way, I think people are gonna miss them once off.
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Speaking of players, since we are hovered over Smash Summit 10, do we want to talk about some of the standout players from that event, or do we want to segue into the FreeMelee center of the topic? What do you think, Walt?
I have two in mind, and if you guys have others, like, feel free. I mean, the big ones for me that were really standouts, well, maybe three actually, were Ginger, Sunsei, and then on the EU side, Pipsqueak. The three of those, like, they fucking crushed it, man. Holy shit. It's like insane performance. And it's like, I feel like we need to talk about it a little bit because I know, like, Toph, you just put Ginger like easily in your top 10. I completely agree with that. It may be even closer to like a top 5 area if we can manage it. But like, it's like all three of them, like, really phenomenal.
Yeah.
What's Ginger then? Do you want to speak to kind of that, or
what's
Ginger?
That?
Well, like, I was gonna say, you know, we could pick a player, but, you know, start with whoever you want.
Yeah, like Ginger, I mean, I think his thing is like, it was just really cool. And it was cool too because like Squid's so intimately familiar with kind of the stuff Ginger likes to go for and kind of what his game plans are and what his options are and stuff like that. It was really cool having Squid on the broadcast for some of Ginger's really good wins and his performance. Like the H-Box set was I think that was probably the standout set of the tournament, if not Sunsei versus H-Box, which was you know, equally like nerve-wracking. And yeah, just like really wholesome to see Ginger do so well after working so hard. Sunsei, yeah, I mean, I hope he's like not disappointed because I feel like he definitely, Yeah, I mean, you have to be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just felt like he played so absurdly good and just kind of got like clutch boxed on, not just by HBox, but by kind of several people. It felt like he kind of got clutch boxed on. Like we kept saying it obviously on the cast, but he could have won his pool. He could have beaten everybody.
Yeah.
He got some good wins. Like he did beat Axe, which is great, especially for a Fox player. And he had the win over Face Roll. Those are two amazing wins. Obviously, like those two wins alone put him, I think, pretty solidly in the top 20 right now. But he looked so good, and he's been looking good through all of SCL. He's had a lot of like really like on the cusp performances. Like he got 5th at SCL when you needed to be top 4 to qualify like 3 weeks in a row. So yeah, for Sunsei, like it feels like he's kind of potentially even on the verge of like a breakthrough to like get even better. And I hope he can look at it that way.
I think so too. It's like even across all those sets, specifically HBox, it's like it looked like he was putting so many things together.
It came down to an up throw up
yeah,
SDI.
Yeah. It's just like just barely not going the distance there is like, beating HBox is already a huge accomplishment, but like going game 5, like literally last hit, kind of like, what was it, GTX 2017 or whatever, the $10,000 SDI that HBox had. Similar situation with Sunsei. It's just kind of like he's so close, man.
Mm-hmm. I have to imagine, like, as a competitor, he must feel like, I think when you're trying to get good at anything, there's this feeling of like, could I do that? Like, is that possible? And you have to walk away from that event thinking, this is possible. Like,
oh yeah,
I feel like everyone in the chat, anyone who watched it, was like, oh crap, like he could win the pool, like he could beat everybody. And I don't know if I walked into that event thinking that's what I'm going to see from Sunsei. So I feel like that's got to be hugely motivating for him, and maybe kind of we'll see a blow up performance soon.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the last one I mentioned of the 3 was on the EU side. Raider, I don't know if you ended up watching much of the EU bracket, but I caught it during the actual live stream itself, so I got to watch Pipsqueak's run get cut short in a pretty crushing Game 5 finish against Prof, which was sad to see because it looked like a similar situation to Sunsei HBox. It looks like he put it all together, looks like he had it to me, and just didn't quite go the distance.
Just short, really just short. And he had a great run, but I saw a lot of EU is kind of this region where I feel like there's a lot of hungry up-and-comers. And they were saying, like, a bunch of those guys, like, they were saying, like, yeah, it's sad that we couldn't break the top 3. The top 3 was Lef and Triff, Prof. Because they really are, sorry, Lef and Prof, Triff. Shout-outs to Prof, by the way, before I get ahead of myself, like...
Oh, he played amazing, too.
Because apparently he has, I don't think he's beaten Triff in a while, and, like, that loser set was such a performance. Even his Leffen set, you got to give him props. Like, he definitely had one of his career standout tournaments, especially for being such an old-school player, like... To see someone like that.
Triff in a while too. He 3-0'd him in losers, right?
Oh, he destroyed him in losers.
Yeah,
he destroyed him in losers. But yeah, like Pipsqueak, and not just him, but like you look at solo battle, you look at players like Bryson, who was at Summit 9. Yep. There are a lot of people in Europe who are kind of taking advantage of these Poland Arena tournaments. Shoutouts to Poland, who's doing amazing work over there. It's just so good to have consistent competition,
Yeah.
Frenzy looked insane. Frenzy's Falco against Leffen looked like a god, especially that game 1 and early game 2. There were some really there was a lot of impressive play coming out of the EU brand. Honestly, some of those matches, like you wanted to see them against the NA. The guys that made bracket from NA.
Dream. If we could do that, it would be like everything coming together.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be phenomenal.
And then that just like rolling back into the talks we just had about how online has shaped everything. It just kind of like begs the question, what is this what's the landscape going to look like when we can have, NA EU tournaments in person again, because everybody is crushing it right now.
Right.
Yeah, I think it really goes all back down to the accessibility thing. Like, the practice tools, the online play. I think the reason why we see that kind of gap in tiers of players closing is it all goes back to that, just like being able to actually have really good, consistent practice and refined practice is creating like monster players. Like, I know Pipsqueak is a grinder. I see him tweeting all the time about Melee and posting clips, and him and Nikki. So it's not at all surprising to see him do well, for sure.
No, not at all. Yeah, Nikki too. Yeah, like even just watching them, like you can tell, like they would do some serious work in some like North American majors once we have those again.
Yeah, I'm super looking forward to it.
Anymore. Like I'm really glad that we just.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm really glad they made that switch, honestly. And like you know, it's like what is the most swingy matchup? You know, from PAL to NTSC, like Sheik Peach is probably one of them in the top tiers, and Triff is still beating Amsa. So like you know, like yeah, I'm really happy. It's just to standardize it, you know, for the top players.
Oh yeah, like if you're watching content and it's not consistent, like say you go online, you go on a channel like mine, and you're trying to learn some melee stuff, and it's like, oh, my down throw doesn't do that. Like that's
that
hurts the scene.
Is it bugged? Like what's going on? Yeah,
random Falco dares, weak Falco dare combos that you can put in your next video radar.
Yeah, so it's really great to see. Again, I think it's all just like the effects of the technology. We're kind of having our own little. I feel like the printing press was invented, but for melee, you know, like we got our Slippy, and then now we got Uncle Punch for Fine, and it's just like, what is going to happen? So crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we kind of pretty extensively went over Summit. That feels pretty good. I do want to touch on our next topic on the list, which is the hashtag FreeMelee movement / Save Smash. I mean, what's up with Nintendo? Like, are we at liberty to talk about this? Can we bring it
I mean, it's all speculation, right? Like, it's all like their end game. I mean, now that we can I mean, the thing was, as we were doing Smash Summit, there was this dark cloud overhead. Just like, are we gonna get a C&D this week? Well, we didn't, right? You know. But you know, there were some obvious steps that were undertaken. Like, you know, you probably noticed, and I mean, I don't even think this is a secret, but the SCL matches were privatized on YouTube.
Yep.
Which actually, are they still? I'm wondering. I wonder if
think they were.
They may still be. But they are privatized. They're not deleted. So hopefully they'll be back at some point.
Yeah, they're still gone.
But yeah, like I think the mood has lifted somewhat. I mean, so I guess the speculation right now, like, and I mean, we've talked about this several times, but yeah, the speculation right now is like, okay, so 2 weeks have passed since that kind of that stuff went down, and you know, beyond the summit, you know, Nintendo was silent. You know, LACS 3 seems like it'll go off without a hitch. So, I mean, I think the community responded. I was very pleased to see the outpour of community support with like FreeMelee and Save Smash. Like, this is exactly what in my eyes, like in terms of the community response, this is just about the best case scenario, because, you know, I mean, I talked about this with Junebug, but like, why do you think Nintendo went through all these back channels? I'm sure you guys read Shia's Twitlonger and Smash Cap, Lincap's Twitlonger. Yeah. I mean, the reason Nintendo went through all these back channels to kind of shut all this shit down, with optics. PM back in the day was optics. Yeah, they wanted to avoid all the negative PR. Because at the end of the day, Nintendo of America is a PR firm, right? Or PR, I should say, a PR branch of Nintendo. And if they're generating more negative PR than positive PR, like they're not doing their job, right? So, you know, I think, like, yeah, it sucks that Big House isn't going to happen. I do not expect Nintendo to walk that decision back. But and yeah, it really sucks, especially for the tournament organizers who thought, you know, in particular Robin Sheridan, they thought they were doing their due diligence by partnering with Nintendo all those years back. But, you know, I think if that's the sacrifice and like they can't run this year, but we showed Nintendo like that we're not to be messed with, and that, you know, there are PR consequences, I suppose, to doing this sort of thing still, even in 2020, then like, yeah, I'm very happy with kind of how things went. I'm feeling very optimistic about it. I mean, and yeah, with LACS 3 on the horizon, Samox's doc, you know, metagame coming out in 2 weeks, like I think we've kind of got a perfect storm scenario that, like, yeah, we'll see what happens, but I'm optimistic that we'll be able to continue to grow as a community with hopefully minimal intrusion from Nintendo.
think one of the things that I feel like is worth kind of touching on, especially for those who don't know, like my kind of career right now, I work as a copywriter. I like work in advertising.
Sure.
And from that experience, you learn the monetary value of like earned media. And for people who don't know what earned media is, it's a PR term primarily. It's when you like, rather than spending money on media, which would be like an ad slot for a commercial or whatever, you earn the media by having an interesting story. And so a good example is like that space jump that Red Bull did. I can't remember how many years ago, like a couple of years. It might have been a while, actually. It might have been like 8 years ago. The measured value of that was something like $73 million in terms of like how much press that story got. And I think what some kind of casual fans of Melee maybe don't see is like getting the opposite, like having multiple trending hashtags basically saying like, fuck you guys, is really, really like expensive, if that's the right word. Like it actually costs them like money in a way. And it's a weird way to think about that. Like I think that people think like, oh yeah, you know, the way we like, you know, what is that the value of a hashtag? Like a lot. Like and there's ways to even try to quantify that. I guess I'm speaking from kind of professional experience. So like it's an L for them. Like they are holding that L hard. So
and I mean, aside from it being like a big L for Nintendo at large, I think it is a humongous wombo W for us, because it's like you look at how fast we made that outreach happen, right? It's like we went trending with that hashtag that has this earned media value of millions probably, and we've got trending #1 on Twitter in like what 20 minutes or something like that. It's I mean, it's just insane, and it just speaks volumes to what communities in general, but the Melee community as a whole is capable of.
Yeah. And I mean, again, this is all to say that like, you know, it's still speculation. Like we don't really know what Nintendo, you know, what the inner workings are right now, but yeah, you can speculate. And I think that, yeah, I mean, there's pressure on them for sure. I don't think they will walk back the Big House decision. That's just not going to happen. But that's not even really the goal.
Yeah, and I don't even think it impacts us that badly if that's the case.
I think
it's like Bobby. Go ahead.
One thing I'm curious to ask you, Toph, since kind of you've been around, as far as I'm aware, well, like the longest out of all of us, clearly, right? Is comparing and contrasting this to EVO 2013, because I think one of the things that I heard a lot is like, obviously that was kind of Melee's like big moment to kind of push back against Nintendo. It's one of the most well known, but the kind of landscape of esports right now is so different that it seems like this was, to me at least, like so much bigger, and Melee is like in such a different state. And I wonder if you could speak to like, how does it feel as a, you know, notable community member? Like what feels different this time versus last time? Like is it bigger, that kind of thing?
Compared to 2013?
Yeah.
The biggest difference, I think, is that we've got, it's not even just the Melee community, but yeah, like people like Ludwig, like people like Ninja, for example, like Moist Critical. There's a lot more of a like influencer marketing, and like that whole slice of things just wasn't a thing in 2013, right? Like I think we're just a lot more mature in terms of both our own marketing power,
Awesome.
and also like just in terms of like I was talking to some people who like are in law, like lawyers who for example, like we were basically talking about, you know, what's the worst that could happen, like if they go after Fizzy, what's the game plan kind of thing. And like that sort of resource definitely didn't exist in 2013, right? So I feel like we are a little bit better equipped as a community now. You know, and it's great because like you look at 2013 and that outpour, it was like, well, shit, this sucks because this Melee at Evo was a charity thing, and so you're trying to shut down a charity thing, which is messed up. And we were worried when this stuff happened, you know, 2 weeks ago with Nintendo shutting down Big House. It was like, well, we don't have that to fall on right now. We don't have the charity angle.
Right.
But then Ludwig went and provided that with LACS3. So, you know, that kind of goes to show you we've kind of got wise a little bit to how to play the optics game.
And I think it's kind of sad to think about, though, where it's like you just said, you know, we came in more prepared for this event, where it's just like,
yeah,
I don't know, oh shit, here we go again. Like, we're dusting off the boxing gloves and it's time to, you know, hit the ring. I don't know what, this shouldn't be a thing that has to happen to people that just enjoy something. You know what I mean?
I think one of the things that I find kind of like fun or impressive or different personally is like, and I see this, I'm a big fan of StarCraft 2 as well, and I see this in that scene, is that like we've grown like older, like even everyone in this podcast is above 25 and, you know, and then some, like, and the average Melee fan I think is now like a career person. They have like skill, like you said, like there's lawyers that are like Melee man.
They're all older than the game.
So we're kind of like, you know, without talking too much about some stuff that's going to happen in December, like there is a bit of like we have a little Avengers assembling kind of squad. It feels almost like of talent that maybe 10 years ago, you know, everyone was still kind of incubating that talent, I guess.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just the fact that we've grown up and gotten jobs, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for some of us left our jobs, but yeah.
Hey, good for you, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, you know, tell me that in a year when I've either when I've either decided it's sustainable or gone back to work. We'll see. We'll see how it pans out.
Listen, subscribe to Toph if you're not already. Come on, like, get after it. It's super, super respectable, man.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
When did you go full time into content creation?
It was like well, I mean, it wasn't like a straight on, because at first I just quit my job and just took time off. I wasn't really doing much. So that was back in like March or April. It was kind of when COVID started, honestly. And then I kind of started doing stuff on the side. And then at a certain point, I was like, all right, let's try to do it, you know, essentially full time and see how that pans out.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of in the experimentation phase. Like, I'm learning something new every day. Mango said on stream today, he was talking about, you know, when you take a day off from streaming or a day or two off from streaming, he was like, yeah, it's kind of like going to the gym. Like when you take like 1 or 2 days off, you get so lazy. You feel like you're the worst streamer in the world. You gotta kind of, you know, it is a grind, and I'm still kind of learning that day by day.
It's like a habit developing thing too.
It's a habit developing thing. Yeah. I've been putting a lot of thought into just kind of like, I've been kind of experimenting a lot with what I want to do, what people like to watch, and finding the intersection between that, I guess. So yeah, but YouTube's cool. YouTube's great. I feel like
it's a fun space.
Yeah, it lets you experiment
when it's fun, when it doesn't suck. But
yeah, when it doesn't suck.
I would actually, you know, it doesn't have to be here, but I'd love to hear more about that, and we can kind of open this discussion up just in terms of general content, because it's like, I think I relate to you personally, because you were an engineer previously, right?
Yeah.
Or software side.
Software.
Yeah. So it's like, for me, it's kind of similar role, and going full time into something like content creation is something that I would love to do, I think, theoretically.
Right.
But then like the realist in me sees that, and it scares the living shit out of me.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you get over that hurdle?
Right. I mean, I had enough money saved up that it wasn't like, you know, wasn't too hard to pull the trigger. I also like talked to some of my recruiter friends, and I was like, hey, if I like take a bunch of time off, like, and I decide I want to come back to tech, essentially, like, am I going to be okay? And so and they kind of reassured me, like, yeah, it's probably not a big deal. So like, definitely depends on what you do. Like, it was just kind of a nice circumstance for me. But I mean, you know, the thing that they tell you, and Ludwig, this is what Ludwig did, is like, do it while you're working, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, Atriarch is going really hard on Twitch right now. He's been growing like crazy, and he's still working his day job at NVIDIA. So like, yeah, he could probably quit his job if he wanted to. I don't even know if he wants to or not or whatever, but like, yeah, do it while you're working first, for sure. If nothing else, it'll teach you about time management. Yeah, do it while you're working. Like, you need that anyway. So like, yeah, you should just try to do it while you're working until you think, okay, I can do this, or okay, I can't, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, for me, like, Radar, interject as well, because I know this is kind of maybe a similar position for you too. So I'm kind of doing that right now also. Like I currently work more on like the biomed side of things. So I do, dental, orthopedic, spinal, like implant stuff, more or less is the long and short of it. I like what I do, but at the same time, I really, really like content. And it's like, that is what my evenings are when I'm not with family or, doing my real life stuff. It's like, how can I, do something and put something into the world that people find value in and that people enjoy. And that's where I really kind of like feel I connect with the community at large personally.
Sure.
So just being able to do that and kind of like go, balls to the wall, like we're going to pump out content, we're going to do all this stuff. Like the full-time side of that really scares me, but I do feel capable of like doing that on a part-time basis, being able to kind of like balance the two of those. It just kind of is like, I wonder what it would be like if I just kind of pull the trigger on it. I don't know how you feel about that, Radar.
I have some thoughts. I think first I wanted to ask Toph, since you said, and I'm sure people in the chat are curious, or people who watch on YouTube, kind of you've learned a lot of stuff in this period since you took some time off. Could you tell us, like, are there any kind of standout things that you feel like you've kind of really taken away from this? You talked a bit about, people are going to learn time management while they're working, but kind of right now, is there anything that really sticks out to you?
Wait, sticks out to me from what perspective?
As in, like, you said that there's a lot of stuff I've learned since trying to go full-time content creation.
Yeah.
Anything specific?
I guess, no, that's a good question. I guess the big things are like, the biggest things are like, okay, I think a lot of people, especially like the Smash scene, like they just kind of turn on Twitch and start playing video games, which like I do some days, like when I don't have anything planned or whatever, but like, it's like, I saw someone say like, okay, this is a very concrete way of putting it, but it's like stream stuff that'll go on YouTube kind of thing. Like if that makes sense. Like think about like, and this is how Ludwig got really big. Every stream felt like an event. When he was growing.
It's all loosely pre-planned too. Which makes
it's like
really
it's good. Like this is an event. This is Twitch Jeopardy. These are the guests. You know, I'm doing the whatever. It's the it felt like there was a narrative. You know, it's just like with tournaments. Like the reason we're invested in how Melee players perform is because we feel like there's a story that we can follow as the viewer.
Sure.
And like if there's no story, it's just not. That's what makes good content.
Yes.
So for me, I've been thinking of like, okay, yeah, sometimes I'll just turn on my stream and play whatever. But like a lot of the time when I do these talks and stuff like that, Toph talks, it's like I want this to be on YouTube and I want it to be like presentable as a YouTube video. And the way that helps me think about things is like, how do I make this interesting for someone who's just jumping in and might not even be following along? How do I make this interesting as like a little 20-30 minute chunk? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely kind of puts a. Yeah, you don't want to just kind of freestyle too hard. Like I think making it feel like there's a story, making it feel like it's an event, like that's what keeps people hooked. You know?
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying I'm the best at it, but that's what I think people are doing for the most part.
I'm like very beyond glad that this is like slipping into a like a discussion on content, especially from you, Toph, because like you're pretty new to all of this and you're performing really well in this too. Like you're doing really great as someone who's relatively new to doing this on a full-time basis. It's really insane. But it's like I know like I'm seeing Ventus Official in the chat, and this is funny because I talk to him a lot when it comes to this stuff, and he's gonna pog when I say that it's like you learn different things like when it comes to like way varying skill sets that you never would have expected to be good at. And before the call, I remember like Radar, you actually said it's like you learn how to be good at everything, right? Yeah. So it's like we become really good at marketing. We become really good at how to frame content, like i.e. what Toph just said, how to make a compelling video, but also a broadcast that you can do live, something that's convertible into into like a more pre-produced format. All of these different skills you just kind of like pick up, and the cool thing about the platform to me is like you learn this as you go. It's not like you go in as an expert ever.
Yeah, no, it's definitely crazy. I think for me, one of the things I find is like a super big learning experience right now is like trying to understand your audience and maybe move outside your bubble, I guess. So a good example of moving outside your bubble is what we're doing right now, in that like Walt and I are kind of known for more like pre-constructed videos. I've been doing some live streaming, but like trying something that you think your audience will like, but maybe you kind of haven't done before. And I think that can be like really tricky because you're sort of like, okay, I know they like, in my case, like videos that take me anywhere from 40 to 80 hours to kind of write, edit, record, etc. But do they like, hey, here's like me thinking about something and talking about it on a stream for 10 minutes and like kind of knowing when to experiment. And I feel like all three of us can probably speak to those times where you're like, it's gonna do well, and like not even really knowing how to evaluate it sometimes, because sometimes it's like an algorithm thing, and then sometimes it's like content. Like
that's like my trigger word, hearing the algorithm.
You gotta look inward, man. You always gotta look inward. It's like everything else. It's the same as Melee, man. Like if you're constantly evaluating how you're doing by like the placings you're getting, you're gonna get burnt out. You know, people get into these rankings arguments. It's the same thing. YouTube numbers, Twitch numbers, rankings. Like when you start focusing on the numbers, you've already lost. Like you got to focus on, if you're a Melee player, you got to focus on the game and why you like the game. And you know, if you're doing content, you can't get wrapped up in.
Yeah, there's
like
an interesting.
You gotta hold yourself to like an intrinsic. How am I, like, how is my content? How are people feeling? Like, how am I, you know what I mean? Like you can't focus on that. You'll burn yourself out so fast.
Yeah, there's an interesting talk I had with a close friend of mine who actually works in the news, and it was kind of like this. It's almost like a confirmation bias thing, where it's like you said, you have to look inward. When you experience like growth and stuff on these platforms, you kind of start obtaining like a selfish bias almost, where it's like, okay, like my videos were averaging 10,000 views, but now my videos are averaging 20,000 views. So if my newest video gets 10,000 views, it automatically fucking sucks. And it's like, no, that's not really how that works. It's like you have to kind of like, it's like a mental like execution test. You have to work through that and figure that part out.
What is it about numbers that we are so drawn to as humans? Like, why do we obsess over that shit?
I hate it. It's so
what
annoying.
is it? Like, why do we do that? I mean, I'm glad the stats exist. Like, I'm glad the stats exist, right? I want to know. But, like, I don't want to care as much as it feels like they make me care, you know? It's it's so toxic. It's so toxic. I'm sure every Melee player can relate to this. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I remember tweeting at one point saying, like, content creation is, like, one of the most insane things you can ever do. You literally just, like, go out and make shit, and like, your whole self-worth in some way is like, oh, I really hope you, like...
Yeah, you're on a balance beam and you're hoping for the best. It's like...
So it can be a little bit crazy, but at the same time, I think the principle I try to work by, live by, whatever, is just, like, would I watch my videos? And if the answer is no, like it's trash, just like get rid of it. Because if you're not interested in, why would other people be, right? So
no, totally.
Yeah, there is like a marketing side to it also, where it's just like, I think throughout my career, if you can call it that, on YouTube, it's like I've dropped content series that like I enjoyed a lot, but it's also kind of like, when it becomes your livelihood too, it's kind of like that's why the numbers are important, and that's where you kind of like get into those self-worth mental struggles, which is like a hard thing to balance, because it's like you obviously want to do things you enjoy so you don't burn out, but you also kind of have to like eat and do other things that are important. So
yeah no, 100%.
This is probably a good segue into kind of the question portion of the podcast, I guess. Sure. Ask the Mixup. One of the questions we got was specifically, what are your kind of content influences? What are some of the biggest influences for content creation? And then the second half of the question is, what is the moment, if you can remember it, where you knew you were in love with Melee? So, Toph, you want to give us your influences or anyone that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think Leffen's YouTube, actually Albert said in the chat earlier, talking about Leffen and his YouTube. I think Leffen's probably, I mean, like, Leffen definitely has this kind of vibe on his YouTube where it feels a little bit more personal than, for example, Mango's mostly feels like stream highlights, right? I feel like Leffen has this kind of thing where, he does a really good, earnest job of summarizing, like, things that are happening, current events in the Smash scene, you know, FGC, stuff like that. And it's very, Yeah, it's exactly the style that it's very close to the style I've kind of ended up going for the most part. And it's great because like Levin's kind of got this image of being like this drama dude, you know, like people like he's beefing with people on Twitter or whatever, but like his YouTube content obviously has a ton of nuance and stuff like that. So it's like people will come for the whatever drama. Not that there's any drama right now, but then, you know, stay for his like very reasonable takes, which is sick. He's found a really nice balance with Twitch and YouTube where it feels like he's more focused on Twitch, but his YouTube feels personal, which is a nice feeling, like versus like the YouTube is just an afterthought.
Yeah.
Which is a trap I think a lot of esports content creators fall into. So I think Levin's actually sick. Love to style my YouTube. Kind of like his eventually.
He streams all of his like YouTube videos, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Awesome Sauce, I think, is one of the coolest Melee YouTubers right now, and Awesome Sauce is really good at like he kind of has that almost like pan and coic kind of like you don't have to be a Melee. You don't even have to know Melee at all to kind of like appreciate the shit. He's like talking about this really geeky Melee stuff, but it's like it's so interesting for a broad audience, you know, which is really dope. Like that's what I think, you know, that's what I think can grow Melee is like, hey, non-Melee players, check out this like weird, quirky or cool shit that you might not have known of. That's kind of what the doc was, just about people instead of gameplay.
Yeah, I've actually talked with him at length about content and his channel and stuff, and I'm just like, dude, I am so like jealous because he has captured the audience that is in between fans of like diehard fans of Melee and people who don't know fucking anything about Melee, which is insanely populated because that is literally everyone. Right. And it's also just like the content is great. So it's like he already made really good content. So factoring that in with just something that's like suddenly relatable now, even if you don't enjoy the game, not only brings visibility to the game, which is really important for all of us, and you know, again, circle of life thing, it helps everybody, but it just makes for a really good, entertaining piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
think for me, what was impressive too is him moving away from like essentially a highlight channel, like a channel that was kind of making compilations of Melee stuff, to suddenly like developing his own original style and like pretty seamlessly hitting that transition of like, hey, I used to kind of go one way and then now look at all this like really original and really fresh and different content that I can make, and it's super cool to see that transition kind of.
Wasn't there didn't it totally feel like there was a period where like there just wasn't really original Melee content on YouTube, and now I just don't feel that way at all? Like, I don't know, I feel like you used to think of Melee on YouTube and you'd think of like, you know, what Pengboy style like Twitch highlight compilations. And that was what Melee on YouTube was if you weren't watching matches.
It was who was it? SSB Seal, the YouTube comment god who just appears on every video ever. I think he put on one of my videos actually where he was like, I feel like specifically for content 2020, like as shitty as it is with the whole COVID situation and not having IRL tournaments, it has been like this blossoming event for just people to make stuff that they wanted to make and perhaps like never were able to because they were tied down by the schedules of tournaments.
Which, by the way, isn't it fucking crazy that like my brain wants to attribute Slippy to that? Like, my brain is like, oh yeah, Slippy because COVID. But Fizzy was working on Slippy before COVID. So it's like, how did that happen? You know what I mean? Like, what fortuitous timing? You know what I'm saying?
Like, I mean, I could say like for
the fact that he had no idea a pandemic was going to happen, and we would need good online Melee more than ever.
Starting a conspiracy theory here.
Well, it's just that's the thing. It's like the timing is so it's impeccable. Like all this shit goes down with Nintendo, and it's like Samux is like, oh well, maybe I'll just release a documentary, and everyone's like, okay, word, that's sick, but the timing has always just been like way too convenient almost, which is super cool to see. I don't know, man. It is amazing. I do think Slippy is a big part of it, but like you said, it's like he was working on that for a while.
Yeah.
I think we're very powerful as a scene right now, which sounds like some anime shit, but I honestly think it's true. Like, I think we have some very talent. Like I said when at the start of the podcast, like we have some really interesting personalities, some really unique type of content coming through. Just a very good time to be a Melee fan. Like, full stop. Crazy.
Yeah. Someone asked when's the new doc dropping. That's in a week and a half, right? 2 weeks.
Yes, metagame comes out on
12th or the 13th.
11th, 12th.
I think he starts on the Friday and he's doing 3 episodes
11.
a night. Yeah.
And when's LACS 3 again?
The weekend right after, I believe.
What do you mean the weekend right after? 19th?
Right after metagame premiere.
Okay. So yeah, December's gonna be big.
Yeah, it's huge.
December's gonna be big. I mean, I'll probably do a viewing party just like everybody else's.
Absolutely.
Probably do it, you know.
Hey, let us know if you do.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's really cool. Like I think like for me, it's like a really humbling experience to be able to like say you're a part of it and like be contributing in your own way in this.
No, it's gonna be, dude. I hope it gets on Netflix.
Yeah,
I
sure.
really hope so, because that was kind of part of the delay, it seemed like, and I feel super bad for him to have something that like I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever finished a video that you worked really hard on, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna release it in a couple days. I feel like for me, at least when I'm hitting that render button, I'm like, get the shit out today, man. Like,
yeah.
And so for him to be basically done and then like going through all this red tape, you know.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. So.
I mean, I remember he was interviewing me in 2015 for this.
Yeah.
Metagame. I mean, this is like, yeah, there's some old.
We're gonna see some young Toph.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it is crazy. I know a personal goal for me is like build up videos such that I could get something that's like feature length, like Mondo Supreme video. Like I'm talking hour, 2 hours, whatever, and like. I've built up to that, but like you just said, Radar, it's like when I get close to finishing, I'm just like, fuck, I want to like post this right now. It's crazy. And I get so eager to post it that I'm just like, I don't even care if I fucked up on certain parts, because I just need to do this and need to kind of like experience the relationship with the viewers, kind of like putting the feeling of putting content out there and like watching people absorb that is just like this weird, like addicting thing.
It's definitely, I was going to say, the dopamine.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So, I'm just like, God damn it, like I need some more fucking videos.
Give me some of that content, baby. Like,
yeah. No, it's December's gonna be really good for that. I mean, it's just in time, essentially, you know. Just in time. Have you ever had an oh shit moment where just a couple of days after you dropped a video, you realize something was wrong and messed up about it? Dude, that's
How about every video I have on my channel?
The one thing, because my videos are still more like Twitch to YouTube.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry about that too much, because I think there is this, you kind of know what you're getting into when you watch one of those videos where it's like, this is a product of the moment. That's what a Twitch stream is, right? Twitch is like in terms of visual media, it's more, you know, on the spectrum between Snapchat or Instagram stories, which are completely fleeting, and YouTube, which is very evergreen or permanent. You know, Twitch is somewhere in the middle, right. I feel. So I don't have to worry about that as much, or at least with the videos I'm making right now. But dude, yeah, I mean, I've done stuff like, you know, longer term. Like I did my oldest video on my YouTube channel from like 4 or 5 years ago, and I remember I recorded that. That was straight to YouTube, and I recorded that several times.
Gotcha.
And it's so like, dude, yeah, like recording a video when you know it's just going. For some reason, for me, it's so much harder to talk to an empty room and just YouTube than to talk to a Twitch chat. Like with Twitch chat, I feel like I'm talking to somebody.
Yeah.
But when I'm like recording something for YouTube, I just feel like so awkward. Maybe I get over that eventually. But yeah, you get over it. You feel like you need to make it perfect.
Yeah, it's a skill, like the marketing that you learn, like the understanding content, understanding SEO, all that stuff. You literally get public speaking skills because you're just some dude in front of a camera for whatever fucking reason people want to listen to you. But it's like you learn how to be comfortable about it, and that's also like a really interesting thing about the platform to me.
Yeah.
I actually had a specific moment just this week, I guess. Is it this week? It might have been this week, where I released my first Hearthstone tutorial, kind of like a similar format to Melee, for Hearthstone Standard at least. And I was going through the video as it was online, and I looked, and there was this scene where it was supposed to be the game in the background and 2 images above, It was just 2 images and a black screen, and I was like, well, somehow I deleted something in the timeline and it didn't line up, and I was just like, well, whatever, it's live, you just got to roll with it. It wasn't too bad. Like, but so I have had, like, you spend 10, 15 hours or something, you're looking at the screen, you finally hit render, and then you're like, looks good, and you hit click, and it's doesn't always work out. But
the open letter to Nintendo video I did, the first upload of it, the audio was just not on. And I was like, oh, fuck. I had to, like, start
That's an important part of videos, I think.
Yeah.
So.
I started listening to it, and I sent it out to a couple friends, just like, hey, let me know what you think of this. Like, is it good to ship out today? And they were like, something, like, isn't right about this. Just like, you know what? You're right. It's actually, the entire video is messed up, so maybe I should fix that. That's live and learn, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to transition to some specific questions that we got?
Yes. I know there's one here specifically for Toph. This is from Rising Phoenix Games on YouTube.
Okay.
He says, question for Toph. I've been teaching a buddy of mine for about a year now. He's doing great and is just getting over the tech skill barrier. However, he's run into an issue where he says his mind goes blank when fighting another human. Any thoughts or advice for this kind of situation?
His mind goes blank when fighting. Well, first of all, this sounds like, I mean, it's his mind goes blank when fighting other. Do we know who he plays?
No.
So, like, there's a couple, dude, I mean, yeah, there's a couple ways you can kind of address this, but, like, yeah, like, when you're,
Oh, he's in chat, actually. He says Falco.
Oh, okay, Falco. Well, Falco's easy, right? Like, Falco's a character that is very good at putting pressure on the opponent without really needing to commit to anything. Like, you can always kind of do something like you can just shoot a laser and then see what happens. Shoot a laser and see what happens. You know, throw out a relatively safe move. Like, you can always, like, I think there's this kind of, I mean, I talked about this. I have a video. One of my early videos on my YouTube channel is I did like a neutral game guide where I talked about there's kind of this neutral game triangle where there's like reactive play where you're reacting to your opponent, you're looking at them, you're trying to react to what they're doing and punish it. You can do a preemptive move, and preemptive is like you're throwing something out that's covering options, and you're essentially, say you think your opponent's going to run in with a running shine, so you're doing like a retreating aerial, hoping they run into it, and then if they don't run into it, you're safe. And then there's like overshooting or being proactive, where you are trying to beat someone who's reacting by essentially doing something that they can't react to. So like the overshoot running shine I just mentioned. And there's this kind of rock, paper, scissors between those styles of play where being proactive beats being reactive because you're doing something they can't react to, which in turn is countered by doing something preemptive. But you can beat preemptive options by playing reactively. You should check the video out on YouTube.
Sure.
To kind of get that. But essentially, if you're playing Falco, you kind of always can if I'm playing Falco against somebody, and you can kind of always. I feel like he's a very easy character to like. Just kind of based on where you are relative to your opponent, just throw something out and see what sticks. You can always just shoot another laser. Like fast lasers in place are so hard to deal with. That's something that Drug Fox always harps on, is like if you're like a new Falco, like 99 times out of 100, chances are you're probably not shooting lasers enough, and you're not shooting them fast enough. Falco is really great at being like, okay, look, I'm just gonna make life difficult for you by doing my little thing, and you got to deal with it. So if you're kind of like stuck, like, oh man, my what should I be doing? Yeah, like concrete answer is like maybe try shooting more lasers and forcing them to be a little like kind of force them to try to find interplay to you instead of vice versa. But yeah, I talk about this more in that neutral game guide, so you can go check that out.
Yeah, I linked it in the chat, and if I can interject as well, just kind of talking more. Like the generalist, not specific to Falco. I think that the conversation we just had about how absolutely insane Uncle Punch is, like, comes into effect really, really hard here, because it's like, practice your stuff on Uncle Punch, and then it's kind of like, in doing that, you lower your overall mental bandwidth that you might have when you're facing a real human, so that it's like, you've put yourself in these situations so many times from training mode, that it's like this stuff comes natural to you, and then you can focus your energy and your mental on figuring out where you're lacking in the rest of the game.
Yeah, I definitely think like some people when they're first starting out don't realize like how much knowledge matters in Melee. Like going, oh, this is the situation, this is what my opponent can do, this is what I can do, here's how it like might play out. And I'm not talking like you sit out and like write a little notebook, although you know some people like doing that. I just mean like if you're coming into a situation where your mind is blank, it's probably because like you haven't been exposed to situations that much. You don't really know like what kind of you're supposed to do, or maybe even what's like happening. And so I feel like one, kind of try to approach that game in almost like a problem and solution mentality, but also just like try one thing and like learn that one thing. You know, maybe it's like running in with a neutral air, see what that beats, see what it loses to, and then try another thing. You know, Toph saying lasers, like I feel like that is kind of a, at least at an early lower level, a way to kind of get a handle on the game. And like don't be afraid of losing also. Just that's just part of it.
Yeah.
A lot of the questions that I'm seeing, at least that we kind of archived in the document, and we'll take a look at some in the chat as well, guys. Just pending time. We don't want to make this go all night, but we'll still answer a bunch of questions. One that I'm seeing, which is kind of something we didn't touch on because we mostly talked about Summit as a tournament, is from Rengarian on YouTube, and he asks, what do you guys think of Zane's Roy taking HBox to last game?
Yeah, he's just on another level. HBox, like, okay, I didn't watch the stream from his perspective, and I said this on my own stream too, but I'll repeat it here, which is that I'm really glad. Apparently, he was disappointed after he won, that he didn't beat him harder, and I'm really glad that he was disappointed. If we got an HBox pop off on Zane's Roy, that would have been a bad look, I think, for HBox's longevity as a competitor.
Yeah.
It is like such a, what is it? You and Scar say mental damage, right? To play against Roy, like the with your main, and then it's like you're like, fuck, I'm losing to this.
Yeah.
And then that kind of like cascades into just like, I'm obviously not someone of HBox's caliber isn't going to crumble in those situations, but somebody like me in those situations absolutely would. So it's like, it's really, really hard to get over that hurdle.
Oh yeah. I mean, like for Zane, that's just like, this is somebody that used to beat his Marth that bad and worse before that. So the fact that he's now, I mean, really, if you guys watched the set, he honestly should have won.
Yeah.
I mean, he was up 25% to 95% on that last stock game 5. He was up a lot, and he kind of got like edge guarded. It's kind of like this is just knowledge. It's the same thing with him taking a game off Axe's Pikachu. It's like, my Marth is like just gonna kind of whoop on these guys. I think that's how he's got to be looking at it. Yeah, not that he should, right? I mean, you got to take tournaments one set at a time. You got to take, you can't take anybody, you can't sleep on anybody, but it's got to be a confidence boost for him.
Yeah, I think the secondary effect is actually, I mean, not to diverge too hard, but it's kind of like, what do you guys think about people just like whipping out secondaries in those situations, if for anything but just kind of like a confidence boost of like, I can do this with my main?
Wait, so what is the question?
Probably like not recommended unless you're like I think for most people it's like you should probably be working on your main. That's how you get good. That's what Zane did to get good. Zane didn't get good practicing Roy.
Right.
Like, like the Roy thing was very much like, hey, I want some Twitch content, right? I want some. But I mean, yeah, I think it bolstered some aspects of his gameplay with Marth. Like in particular, like we saw how good he is at playing high percents because Roy, you're forced to play that game almost every other stock. But yeah, for the most part, like you're not doing that until you're really, really good.
Yeah,
like you should generally just be focusing on your main.
I think the thing that I think about when it comes to Zane almost beating HBox with Roy, for instance, is that that whole arc we had of Axe's Young Link versus Mango's Mario.
Yeah.
That whole situation. I actually interviewed Axe and asked him about that a couple years ago. It's an unreleased interview. I'm planning on doing something with that soon. But I asked him, and it's kind of like the similar thing where he's like, yeah, I picked young Link because if he beats my Pikachu with Mario, my mental is just destroyed at that point. And it's like, that's a hard thing to come back from.
Interesting.
Interesting. To me, like, one of the things I feel like is a bit pervasive in the community maybe is sort of like, you hear a lot of language like, this character is invalidated by this other character. And I think it kind of pushes away from the reality, which is that Melee still has a lot of like fundamentals to the game. And so the reason why someone does well with a low tier is like because of those fundamentals. And I think people who are just starting out, you know, because I remember like in my own scene, you'd have people lose to good players who were playing like, yeah, literally Roy. And they'd go like, how did I lose as Sheik? And it's like, yeah, because they can still wave dash back, they can still dash dance, they can still like hard read an option and punish it aggressively. Like, I think sometimes it almost gets like when Zane was beating people. Obviously, Roy's a terrible character. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that like tier lists don't matter or characters, but like, I think it's sort of like you got to still take it seriously. I guess I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but do you know what I mean? Like that, like even when Ginger say lost to Zane, it was like seen as like this super embarrassing thing when he kind of first brought it out. And I feel like even with a terrible character, there's still so much you can do just by being so much better than the person.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that Azusa said to me a while ago. I mean, he said it in the context of the top tiers where I think this is the most true, but I think it's still true when you reach down into the low tiers is like Melee, the matchups are more even than people like to give them credit for. I think in particular, I think almost all the high tier, top tier matchups are fundamentally or functionally even. Like, when I say functionally even, I mean the better player typically wins. Like, there are kind of, you know, extenuating circumstances with some matchups, but like, yeah, in the general case, like there's a lot of outplay potential in Melee. Like that's just how the game is. I totally agree with you. The whole like invalidated thing is really overblown a lot of the time.
Sure. Radar, I see you're hovering a question in that doc. I don't know if you want to do that one.
Sorry, I'm actually like looking through them.
I didn't know if you wanted to do that one, so I wanted to ask. It's the one right below the Rengarian. That is one I want to do. Probably to wrap up.
Go for it, man. Read it out.
Yeah. So I mean, we can. I don't know if you guys have more time. You want to answer more questions? I definitely want to get this one. I saw that the best Adam, aka Adam Kara, aka the sickest Rivals of Ether content creator on the planet, has asked a question in the chat. Just saying, would love to know y'all's thoughts on the Smash GG acquisition from Microsoft, if there's time.
I think it's a massive W for the community. Because, like, you know, you got to, there's this kind of thing, and, you know, in the tech world where it's like, you know, you kind of always have to be growing, and, you know, as a startup or as a company, you know, and I think for a while it was like, okay, what was Smash GG's endgame? And they got to, you know, this is a great, like, what we get as a community is like, we know Smash GG's not going anywhere, and they'll have the resources to iterate, which is awesome. Like, a lot of my old friends at Smash GG like don't work there anymore, and so, you know, I wasn't sure what their deal was with hiring and stuff like that. And then this dude came along and was like, oh shit, this is like really awesome, because they now, you know, they basically now have, you know, runway to keep doing cool stuff. And Smash GG, I've ragged it on the past for like not being perfect, especially from a UI UX point of view sometimes, but they're definitely the best we got. Like, people should like talk to a TO, especially a TO who used to run tournaments in the pre-Smash GG days, to really understand how much Smash GG changed the game. Like the way big tournaments were run pre-Smash GG, like, I guarantee you, if TOs tried to go back to the way they did things, they wouldn't be able to. They just wouldn't be able to. That was not that long ago.
Like,
no, not in the grand scheme of things, not really.
Yeah.
The way you handled like payments, the way you handled, you know, just seeding, things like that, bracketing. I mean,
challenge.
Well, like, you don't even want to shit on Challenge, because it was helpful.
I'm not shitting on it. It was great. It's just like, you think about how far we've come, though, right?
They, for sure. I mean, I think Challenge, honestly, like, there was a missed opportunity there. I think they essentially cornered the market on that stuff for a while.
Did. Yeah.
I feel like they could have iterated more than they did. But yeah, I mean, Smash, and I think it worked out for them.
Yeah, I think the Smash GG stuff, I'm not going to pretend to like understand the inner workings and the kind of business side of stuff, but I think like anytime you see a major corporation investing in something that's pretty clearly tangentially related to our community, that's a win, right? Like it's just more kind of Melee stock goes up. If there was like a Melee stock market for the game itself or like the community itself, we'd see shares going up right after that announcement. So big.
For sure. I think with that, probably call it a day, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. This seems like a good time, unless there's any other really sick questions.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people. Oh, I see Albert with the stonks, so I appreciate that.
That's a good emote.
Yeah, it's
that's
really
a good emote.
I should absolutely use that. But yeah, no, I think we had really solid discussion. Again, Toph, pleasure having you here, man. It was awesome, especially for just like our pilot episode. Really cool bringing you on for this first one. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Best of luck to you guys too.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll be watching you guys in the future.
So we'll be setting some stuff up in the future.
Okay.
So you guys can keep it locked on where we are. We're going to message, of course, the YouTube channels in the chat. Connect on there. Connect on Twitter. You guys know what to do. But
yeah,
hopefully some stuff coming along. Like we said, maybe bi-weekly. Yoink that Scar and Toph podcast format and see where it takes us. But really excited and really happy that we were able to do this. Toph, you're awesome. Co-host Radar, thank you for encouraging this to happen, because I was a little skeptical at first, but this was really great. So
I think before we go, Toph, just since you came on the show, and thank you for that, is there anything you want to shout out or anything you want to plug kind of before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing Twitch and YouTube pretty regularly. I'm going to be going live at about 3 p.m. for the next couple days. I got some fun stuff this weekend. I'm going to be talking more about Uncle Punch's Training Mode 3.0, which, by the way, everyone should check that out at his Patreon. I believe it's, what is it, patreon.com/
Uncle Punch.
I think it's Uncle Punch, yeah.
I think it's / Uncle Punch, yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to be doing some streams over the next couple days on Twitch at 3 p.m. And my YouTube is youtube.com/ TophBBQ, which is, yeah, I've been really grateful for all the support I've gotten so far. Side note, I've always thought it's really funny how I feel like maybe like 5-10 years ago, there was this kind of like, remember when YouTube comments had a really shitty vibe? Everyone's like, man, YouTube comments are just the worst place on the internet. I feel like YouTube comments are great now.
Like, you might have, maybe you have a good community is what you're trying to say.
Maybe I just have a really, maybe I should just be thankful for having a really great community, but like it's just been super awesome. I love reading the comments on all my videos, and there's just kind of this really nice outpour of Melee love. So shout outs to everyone who's ever dropped a comment, I guess. And that's the main place you can find me, I guess, twitch.tv and youtube.com / TophBBQ. No wonder.
That's a huge reflection on you just as a creator too. I'll just say straight up, is like the fact that you get this kind of outreach and response just means that you're doing the right thing. So keep it up for sure.
Yeah, I guess I know what you. Thank you. But I guess you're right. I think people do tend to attract the sort of, toxic people attract toxic people, and so on and so forth. So, it's a good point.
And guys, Toph, I believe, is streaming right after this, so we will be dropping a host for you guys. Of course, we're not going to be live at that point, but we'll be in there chatting, seeing whatever you end up doing for the evening. So. Looking forward to seeing that. Oh, and there's the camera.
Yeah,
this is the whole. Yeah, we went
right until the OBS.
That's right. Yeah. So
I gotta get ready to go live.
With that, we appreciate it, and of course, thanks for tuning into the Mixup, guys. And we'll be back soon. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching, guys.